Friends, in this module, let us attempt to understand the concept and idea of choreography in Bharatanatyam. Today, the term choreography is familiar to all in the context of dance. It has been made popular especially by the film industry in India. But till a few decades ago, the gurus of the classical dance forms did not use this term to describe what they were doing. Perhaps it would not be entirely out of place to believe that choreography is a term that has been borrowed from the Western dance vocabulary into Indian classical dance. Also, the gradual shift from the solo to group work has popularized and established the term further in describing the activity of developing a dance work. One way of looking at it, that is choreography, is how William Forsyth describes it. According to him, choreography is about organizing bodies in space, or you are organizing bodies with other bodies in an environment that is organized. However, in the context of Indian classical dance forms, the above definition of choreography does not do justice to the many aspects involved in the making of a dance number, especially if we take it into account the traditional margam. In olden days, decades ago, the gurus would say, I have put together this jati, rather than I have choreographed this jati. The needs of absolute ownership of material was lacking in those times. Coming from a culture where oral traditions played a significant role in the transfer of knowledge and where anonymous artists created great piece of art, the sense of proprietorship and entitlement while being present was perhaps not overly pronounced. We look into wonderment at the architecture of ancient and medieval India. We marvel at the beauty of dancing figures intricately carved on the walls of temples. But we rarely even stop to think about the artist who made them. The times have changed, and all professional fields demand greater transparency and recognition of those generating creative content. Today, ownership and copyrights have gained great importance, which is also because creative material is easily accessible and the methods of teaching and learning have undergone significant changes. To explore the concept of choreography in the context of Bharatanatyam, we first need to understand the importance of traditional margam. The legendary dancer Bala Saraswati described the margam by comparing it to the architecture of South Indian temple. According to her, the traditional order of the Bharatanatyam recital is the correct sequence in the practice of this art for revealing the spiritual through the corporeal. The Bharatanatyam recital is structured like a great temple. We enter through the Gopuram, the outer hall of Alaripu, cross the Ardhamandapa, the halfway hall of Jatiswaram, then the Mandapam, the great hall of Shabdam, and enter the holy precinct of the deity in the Varnam. This is the space that gives the dancer expansive scope to reveal in the music, rhythm and moods of the dance. The Varnam is the continuum which gives ever-expanding room to the dancer to delight in her self-fulfillment by providing the fullest scope to her over creativity as well as to the tradition of the art. In dancing to Pada, one experiences the contentment, cool and the quiet of entering the sanctum from its external precinct. Dancing to the Padam is akin to the juncture when the cascading lights of the worships are withdrawn and the drum beats die down to the simple and solemn chanting of sacred verses in the closeness of the God. Then the Tillana breaks into movement like the final burning of the camphor accompanied by a measure of din and bustle. This conclusion, the devotee takes to his heart the God he has so far glorified outside, and the dancer completes the traditional order by dancing to the simple devotional verse. From the above quote, it is clear that each number in the Bharatanatyam repertoire requires to be approached differently. Once the margam is learned from a guru over a period of time, the next phase in the process of learning is to develop a personal relationship with the particular piece of the margam. To make a piece his or her own is a challenge for the dancer. This requires an in-depth understanding of the piece, its music, rhythm, context, sequence, etc., which would then facilitate the dancer in attempting the improvise. Each artist adds something of his or her own to a dance number that may have been hundreds of years old. The dance form is like a flowing river. As students, we take from the river, and then the onus is also on us to give back to the river and make the flow richer. The dance number from the margam are passed on from generation to generation, but they keep assuming new identities while also maintaining the tradition. The dances are not doing the job of a postman, where they take a message from one person and deliver it in its same exact avatar to the next. The dance forms are vibrant and they reflect the aesthetics of the society one lives in. As the cognitive and aesthetic needs of a society change, so does the approach to the choreography of a piece. Every artist makes an individual statement in his or her own, while also reflecting the Guru's identity. The Guru's identity is closely linked to the concept of gharana. Within the particular classical form, there are several different styles which are known as gharanas or banis. These gharanas have developed based on the individual genius of a particular artist, who found a significant number of followers learning and emulating their style. This led to the creation of a variety of schools of thought distinct from each other within the larger tradition. With subtle differences in technique and the approach to dance, these gharanas have contributed in adding diversity and richness in the classical dance forms. For the continuation of particular gharana, it is imperative to have students who imbibe the specificities of the style and in turn pass them on to the next generation. A suitable example in attempting to understand the subtle differences of the various styles within Bharatanatyam comes from Janet O'Shea's writing, comparing the style of the two legendary contemporary artists, Bala Saraswati and Rukmini Devi. She explains the divergence in the methods of renditions of Kalakshetra dancers, those who have been trained in Rukmini Devi's style, and the students of Bala Saraswati. A Kalakshetra dancer snaps the limbs into a firmly angled position. A Bala Saraswati student eases them into a gently articulated gesture. The Kalakshetra dancer reaches out into space, while a dancer in Bala Saraswati style retains an internal focus. Bala Saraswati students likewise give a leisurely quality to the transitional movement, especially those of the hands and arms, while Devi's attention to accuracy encourages a staccato articulation of arms and head movements. In the contemporary scenario, it is difficult to find the distinction of the gharanas in dance performances. With the popularization and democratization of Bharatanatyam, dancers have had the freedom to learn under various gurus belonging to different gharanas. In this sense, the relevance of gharana has diminished over time. The dancers have managed to enhance their skills by taking different ideas and approaches from different teachers and then bringing them together in their choreography using their own intelligence. Many times, students of Bharatanatyam wonder whether they should loyally remain with one school or thought, or if it is okay to learn different approaches. While it completely depends on the will of the individual dancer based on his or her relationship with the guru, it is important to steer clear from confusing oneself. The basic training under one teacher and a complete command over the margam is essential before venturing into exploring other possibilities. Alarmel Valli describes her journey of Bharatanatyam, which began under the watchful eye of her gurus, Pannanallur Sri Chokkalingam Pillai and his son Sri Subbaraya Pillai, in an old ramshackle classroom next to the railway tracks. My masters gave me most precious gifts, the sounds of foundation in the dance grammar and the technique and the freedom to soar and fly, to be my own dancer. Thanks to them, that classical dance for me is not a received grammar, but a reinvented one. Thus, in attempting to understand the methodology of the making of a work of dance, it is important to know that there are multiple approaches. What a student needs to develop through training is a set of skills that would help him or her in revisiting and improvising within the piece taught by their guru. Indian classical dances are not merely a physical activity. They involve an engagement with poetry and literature, music, mythology, spirituality, and yoga, and they reflect the aesthetics, the cultural ethos, and the flavor of the region they belong to. Choreography is a neutral term that does not instantly suggest these aspects of a classical dance form. It is hence the dancer's prerogative to develop the choreography in a manner that it accommodates all these facets that qualify the work to be perceived as classical dance. According to O'Shea, the late 20th century dancers who identified their work as Bharatanatyam rather than as Indian contemporary dance retained the fundamental premise that Bharatanatyam best expressed originality with allegiance to tradition. It is important to note that the understanding of the scope of improvisation and creativity has to be built in throughout the process of training. The imagination of the students has to be activated at an early stage so that the concept of creating and choreographing is not alien to them at the later stage in life. Even during the early stages of learning, the student have to be encouraged to attempt the use in various jatis, to look for connections between movements, etc. All these tools given to the students from the very beginning equip them to later push the frontiers and broaden their horizons. In her teaching, Bala Saraswati sought to uphold traditional modes while adjusting them to new context. Bala Saraswati maintained that the traditional form already constituted a creative art. The grammar and the codified structure of the dance form are not restrictive or limiting. We can compare them to the grammar and vocabulary of the language. The mastery over the grammar is imperative before one can start writing poetry. The rules and codes do not limit creativity. In fact, they are tools that equip us to be able to narrate stories. The better the command over grammar and vocabulary, the more interesting the narration becomes. Bharatanatyam has come a long way, with its roots in the temples of South India to the contemporary democratic proscenium stage. In this journey, it has consistently evolved to make itself relevant. From being danced in the courtyards of the temple as an offering to the god, it has had to equip itself to be presented in large space for diverse audience. According to Stephen Spire, the internal relationship between the dance and the dancer and the external relation between the dance and the society are questions that cannot be taken lightly. Choreography often becomes that bridge that connects the dancer with his or her dance and ultimately with society at large. According to Mrinalini Sarabhai, the intellect contemplates, the body expresses. The body has to be perfectly trained to order that mind can use it whichever way it will. The choreographer evaluates each movement and finds its unique quality. The sat or essence, the choreographer does not merely accept a movement but tries to understand and analyze the why of it. Today, performers have to be prepared to be able to adopt a different space. The same piece requires tweaking depending on a number of factors such as the size of the performance area, the kind of floor, whether the dancer has live musicians or supporting him or is dancing to recorded music, the availability of lights and the technicians, the occasion of the performance, the nature and size of the audience, and so on. It is the guru mentoring that helps in developing the required skills and cultivating the minds of the students. On one hand, Sarabhai stresses greatly on the importance of inquiry and inquisitiveness of the part on the part of the students. On the other, she stresses equally on the fact that the teacher should not only encourage the students to question, but should also be willing to explain. The process, in her view, should be based on the understanding and knowledge and not on limitations. Bharatanatyam is a performing arts that has evolved as a popular art form in the recent decades of this century, which hundreds and hundreds of students, literally hordes, registered in several institutes learning the basics of this dance form. However, I would like to discuss a crucial difference that must be made within the practitioners of this art form, the difference between the artist and the performers. On the surface of it, this distinction may seem to be rather insignificant, since after all, are not all dancers supposed to be performers. But despite this argument, there are key differences between the artist and the performers in terms of objectives, training, growth and creativity. And it is these issues that I would like to discuss. Who is an artist is an art form like Bharatanatyam. To me, several factors define the term Bharatanatyam artist. First, of course, is training. All artists must have undergone a basic grind of at least 10 years to absorb the crucial nuance of the style. The way the movements flow from within rather than without, the fluidity of the expressional content, the ease with which the dancer handles the medium are all keys to understanding the training an artist has completed. The artist is first immersed in learning the traditional marga of the dance. Each of the dance forms facets need to be understood and assimilated. What is the geometry of the movement? Which part of the body is motor for a particular movement? How the eyes, lips and neck enhance each movement? All these need to be digested and absorbed. But to that training, the artist adds newer dimensions like editing and bringing additionality, accurately expressed as innovations. What does this mean? Each dancer's body is unique and several movements taught in any standard syllabus of Bharatanatyam may be unsuited to the dancer's particular form. So, each artist has to work hard to individualize the training to suit his or her special circumstances. The ability not only to erase the ugly, but to intelligently add movements, gestures and hastamudras and references are important hallmarks of the artist. In terms of what is danced is also a conscious decision the artist makes. Some of the poetry and librettos used in the traditional repertoire are quite unsuited to the evolving role and vision of our society, especially in their gender dimensions. Artists are those dancers who are very sensitive to the suitability of the ideas employed. What also separates artists from performers is the objective of the dancing. An artist dances for herself. The rationale for the dance lies within her. Her very existence depends on the dance. To a performer, the rationale for performing is just that she makes herself adept at tailoring the art to match what the audience wants or likes. To the artist, this public approbation is largely incidental. If applause comes, it is welcome, but it is not pursued for the sustenance of her inner calm. Thus, while the philosophical mooring for an artist lies within, to the performer it lies without. This is not to say that the artists do not require opportunities to present their art. Bharatanatyam is after all a performing art. But while the artist seeks her own inner spaces for equilibrium, performers merely seek approbation from others. Growth is also a differential. An artist is extremely unhappy with the status quo. New impulses constantly feed the urge to create anew. New movements, new ideas, new context, new sparks are all integrated to the dance. Each day is seen as a challenge, a fresh start, and similarly, each time a piece is danced, his dimensions vary, its emphasis changes, and its rasa evolves or is expressed at a different pace. I am reminded of how my first Bharatanatyam teacher, Swarna Saraswati of the Dasi Parampara of Tanjore, said about what value we should aspire to in dance. She taught us a beautiful metaphor. Shiva, it is said, she told us, delights to dance at the time of Pradosha, or that time of day when day merges into night. It is a time of shifting colors, of birds coming home to nest, when ambling cows return to their goshalas, creating mist of Godhuli, the dust. It is the moment of budding stars and the tranquility. It is a time when all life draws into itself, when the universe goes into meditation. That moment is the dearest to the prime yogi of the Hindu pantheon, Shiva. And his dance, the Pradosha Tandava, is seen as a symbol of polarities merging to create a holistic experience, a unity of activity and rest, of cognition and meditation, of the universe and the entelechy. It is the scene of Pradosha that Swarna Saraswati, my dance guru, enshrined in her dance and imparted to her artist students. Her own dance was a beautiful union of Satvika and Angika bhavas of expression and movement in Bharatanatyam. And learning from her was a unique experience. She emphasized that dance, especially Bharatanatyam, was a unique dance where the body moved around its axis. All movements in Bharatanatyam proceeds from a still center, both in physical and metaphysical terms, in the human frame. Space and time are thus internalized. Movements merge into one another like the changing colors of Pradosha. Emotions and feelings speed like homing birds and come to nestle in the human heart. Rasa sparkles like budding stars, and Shantam, peace, pervades the Rangabhumi and spills beyond its border to the minds of Rasikas, that is the spectator. This definition of artist and of the art form is still sacred, and newer students need to be made aware of this difference. The study process should not be aimed only towards performance, but should lead to deeper understanding of the dance as an art form. And this requires an understanding of the allied and related areas like music, poetry and aesthetics. But above all, dance must be a a compact with the dancer's inner resilience, the inner fount. Dance is not merely a performance. It is a view or vistas beyond. Dance is an experience through which the artist's soul is unfurled not to the audience but to the rasika, the connoisseur, and more so to our inner Shivas. Friends, I am sure the teaching of these masters must have enriched your understanding of Bharatanatyam further, and you must have enjoyed it.